Hey everybody, Carl Schoof here from Snorkel.tv. Welcome back. Today what we're going to be doing is just showing you very quickly how you can develop this very playful animation and nav menu that DesignCharts.com has built. And what we're really going to be focusing on here is how this effect is created as far as what you're seeing visually, with the text changing from being white text on a black background to black text on a white background. Now you may look at this and initially say, oh, we'll just have a mask that builds and reveals, the different color combinations, and then we'll tween a mask around. But we can do all this without using a mask at all. We're going to be using the blend mode called invert. All right, we're just going to be tweening the size of a movie clip on top of the text and the background, and it's going to handle that color inversion for us. All right, so very playful menu here. And what we're going to do is just look at the file that I've built. Here, I've just made a list of world famous monster trucks, and I've slowed the tween down just a little bit so that you can actually see how this effect works. You'll see that as that tween is happening, we're literally inverting what's white to black and what's black to white. All right, and it's just a nice little playful effect here. So the main solution here lies in the library. I have a symbol called nav item. If I look inside of there, I have three layers. I have cover, which is the movie clip that we're going to be tweening the size of to get this effect. So you'll see that I have white text right here on a black background. So this thing here called cover, and also let me just show you that this text here that I selected has an instance name of label underscore text, because we're going to be dynamically changing that text. So let's go back to cover, and you'll see that this cover movie clip has a blending mode of invert. If I say blend normal, it just appears to be a green rectangle. All right, but as I change that blend mode to invert, you'll see here that anything beneath it gets inverted. So literally what we're going to be doing is animating the width of this thing changing. It's going to be growing, and when we tween this programmatically, it's going to be tweening from its registration point. If I hold down Option, that's exactly the effect that we're going to be going for. So let's just undo all that. And so you'll just want to understand that this green cover here is just saying, hey, invert everything underneath me. So let's go back to scene one. And you'll notice that there's nothing on my stage at all, but when I test this movie out, you'll see all these items show up. Well, what did I do there? Well, I think I took that blend mode off. So let's make sure I select that green cover and say, hey, blending, and we'll go to invert, and now we have black text on a white background. If we hide that cover, white text on a black background. Let's go back to scene one, and let's look at our code here. Before we do that, I want to show you that this thing called nav item is set to export with a class of nav item. And so let me just go to the properties to show you beginners how we do that. So we specify the class as nav item. Technically that N should be uppercase, but let's not worry about that right now. Let's hit OK. Scroll on by, and here in the code what we have is an array set up, which is just a list of all the names of the monster trucks I want to feature. And I also create a container movie clip called nav, that I'm adding it to the display list. This thing called nav is going to contain or hold all of the individual nav items that I put into it. I have a very simple for loop here, which starts a counter variable called I at 0. It always checks to see if the current value of counter is less than the number of items in my array. And after each run of the loop, we increment I by 1. This is not necessarily a tutorial on loops. We can give you some resources for those if necessary. So every time we go through this array, we're going to create a new nav item, and we're going to pull it out of the lot. We're going to say, hey, this variable n is going to be a new nav item, which we're going to suck out of my library. And we're going to set that cover movie clip to have a width of 0. We're going to tell the mouse children property of that app item to be false, so that our text fields don't respond to mouse interactions. Button mode gives us the hand cursor. Y equals I times 62. That controls the spacing of our elements. So if I made that a small number like 10, you would see that all of our items here are very close to each other. They're overlapping, so we don't want that. So I times 62 gives us a nice little 2-pixel spacing in between all of our items. So this is why sometimes it's more advantageous to place things on the stage via code, because if you ever want to change the spacing, I can change one little number here, make that 68, and now I have more wiggle room between each one of my items. So neat little tip there. And then here we're just setting the text to be whatever item we're pulling out of the array with an index of the current value of I. Instead of doing that, I could say hello, and then you'll see that each nav item says hello. It's like magic sometimes, but I want to take out the value, the item with an index of I from my array. And then lastly, we have to add this new object to the nav movie clip. All right, and then it's all fairly simple. We have an event listener for mouse over and mouse out, and each one of these is going to tell that cover to change its width either to 475, which is the total width of each nav item, or we're going to tween back to a width of 0. So that's just the overview of the code, and now you can change that array to say anything you want, and you can just change all the text inside of your buttons. If you want to speed up the animation, it's very easy to do. When I roll over, I could say, you know what, let's have that take just 1 second. And I can even play around and say, oh, you know what, let's do a bounce, ease out at the end. Who knows? Boom, boom. So changing one line of code changes the way each nav item responds. If you want to change the order of things or add something new, maybe Gravedigger got knocked out and maybe Superman the truck takes first place, well, I just changed the text and there you go. So I don't have to have 10 or 15 different symbols in the library and manually change their text. The array drives everything that you see here. All right, so again, guys, just a quick overview. If you want to download these files, be my guest. I'll have them posted at snorkel.tv. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. All right.